Welcome to another Lumion live stream tutorial. This is Chris Welton from CWelton Design. In this tutorial, we're going to cover an in-depth look at the new 3D grass with Lumion 9. So, as Lumion 9 has been released, one of the biggest key features that came out is this new 3D grass that's come. Along with many other features, this is definitely an improvement that really makes Lumion 9 stand out to other versions. And it's a little tricky to kind of understand because we've had grass since Lumion 4. I remember when grass came out, and that was amazing. But now we have this new 3D grass, and just in case this is confusing some people, I'm going to make sure to show the distinction here. So here we are jumping into Lumion, and just going to ignore these panels over here. We're going to take a look at our default Lumion grass. This is pretty much just the Lumion plane scene. And I have some examples we'll look at there in a moment. But if you're very new to Lumion and are not sure about even turning on the existing 3D grass, here's a quick tutorial on how to do that. We go into the Landscape tab, Landscape Grass. So I think this was called 3D grass or grass before. It is now distinguished as this is landscape grass versus a new 3D grass, and you'll definitely see a difference. So I've noticed a lot of people, we'll find people who are using Lumion who don't even know how to turn on the grass, because by default we see a decent texture of flat grass. It looks pretty good, but it's not 3D. Just by turning this on and off, we instantly start to get grass here. We can change its size, its height, and sort of randomize it in here. You could even add some little objects in here, which makes it really cool. Definitely tons and tons of options to play in here. It renders out pretty well. I was pretty happy about this, and this grass moves with the wind. The wind slider will make it move. It was a huge deal when it came out, but I've definitely seen some limitations in it. I mean, if you look at it really closely, let's make this really big. You see that these are just basically gradient images. They're so small. When you render back here, you don't notice it, but realistically, it's real. It gets realism to a certain point, and that's where Lumion apparently said, "Let's make this better." So they introduced 3D grass. So let's go ahead and turn this off, on off, just like that, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this little panel here. So to find 3D grass, we go through the material editor. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one here. These are all the examples of the pre-set up 3D grasses that Lumion have developed that ship out with all Lumion 9s. Again, this is a Lumion 9 Pro feature as well. Want to mention that out. So usually default here. To find 3D grass, we go to the Nature tab, and then right next to 2D grass, which they call it now, these are just textures, we have 3D grass. And if you've noticed, I've basically arrayed out all of the ones that come out with Lumion, their presets, in kind of the same order here. And you can just take a quick little look at it. You notice there's square patterns here, checkerboard grass. You see those out. And there's all the different variations that Lumion has developed for us. Some pretty cool, interesting patterns to play with. And then we get into just, if you want just regular grass, clean cut grass, 2 variations. Sorry, I'm zooming a little faster than I want to. So that's kind of your typical grass here. And we have road grass. This one kind of looks like rows of farm grass here. And my favorites here are these kind of wild grasses, which were shown off in the Lumion 9 trailer on that cliff house and some of the other examples. They really got a nice kind of randomized look, and they render extremely well. In fact, what we're seeing, although it looks great, this is still just a preview. When you hit the render button, even more magic happens and really brings these to life. So let's start by taking a look here. As you see, that these blades of grass are individually textured. There's even kind of a dead tip kind of look on it. Each one is kind of a randomized image. If you look really close, they're just the little pieces arrayed in such a way that when it's clustered out, it just looks full in 3D, even though technically they are just a bunch of randomized little 2D cutouts. So as you can notice, when we jump into here, we get several sliders here. And you know, I'm actually going to go, when we dive into this, I'm actually going to go over to this sphere I have here, which will kind of help demonstrate a lot of these effects better. Those were flat planes. There's some gravity I'm going to be talking about that don't show up on there really effectively. Obviously, a lot of you guys are going to be using topography with some contours in it that will showcase some of this, but this is kind of the extreme example of using this sphere. So right off the bat, one thing you'll notice, the grass only grows on the upper half. So after a certain degree, a certain angle, it's not even going to show up. That's probably not a problem for anyone, but interesting note I noticed when I put this into here. So here we can kind of go into all what all the sliders do in here. So this is the clean cut grass, except I have just increased the size of the grass just to help us see this effect a little better. So taking a look first, this is just like many other effects. We have colorization. This is set here to this dark green here. We can lighten this, we can tint this, all sorts of other colors somewhere in there, and the coloration slider is going to mix it. This image apparently is actually pretty desaturated, and just add a little bit extra green in there to kind of find your mix of color there. So that's just like the standard material. You guys should be used to that now. And now we have a gravity force slider here. So this one's really interesting. They've definitely gone through and added many abilities to kind of mimic physics and physics of grass and how things are affected naturally and kind of randomized to really get that realistic natural look that happens in nature. And gravity force is the first one we'll look at, where this one will actually, if you notice, especially on the ends here, where this angle is steep, gravity's pulling on it and making it fall down. I can make this even longer. Gravity force. If not, they're just unnaturally sticking up. It pulls it down, but if we go to the top here, North Pole, it's not doing too much. So pretty simple concept, but this really showcases it well, whereas the flat plane didn't. Another interesting one is bending force. So in this case, I'm gonna turn gravity pretty low. What bending force does is this is what really grows off of this normal map, and we're gonna talk a little more about that later. But the bending force is kind of this randomization of the angles, like individual, like randomized angles inside of here. So not all of them at once, kind of like gravity works, but just some sort of like twisting randomization noise pattern that's just makes it look less uniform and too perfect, because nature does not show up like that. Now I've already been playing with grass size. This works just like the other one. An interesting note to show is the actual quantity of grass blades that will be rendered will be limited if you get too small, as you can see here. Pretty simple here, and of course I have my grass length exaggerated here so we can see some of these effects better. Now this map scale, this works off of this imported map that came with Lumion, but if you import your own custom map, this is of course how you would adjust it and affect its tiling. And of course if you set it to 0, if you have it UV mapped perfectly in your software, it'll read that as well. Pretty simple, straightforward, and just a rotation, just some extra control here. We're on a sphere, so mapping's kind of weird, but it works just like it does in other textures. Now we have another little randomizer here in curliness. Now the curlies, if you don't have it, if you have it all the way down, even with bending force, the bending force is kind of the lower end angles, and the curl seems to be the upper end angles. This will, some grass you'll notice just kind of falls down like this, and some has it sticking straight up. Maybe grass that's walked on more. I don't pretend to be a master of grass, but again, these three sliders, gravity, bending, and curliness, are really going to get that randomized natural look you're looking for from just the default sliders. And roughness will affect kind of the sheen and when it's how it reflects. So feel free to play with that and kind of get the effects you want. As I look at it here, I'm seeing it looks shinier lower, and as you get higher, it is less shiny. It is technically the inverse of glossiness, but again, it makes a little difference. Not a huge difference in here, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. You can just eyeball it here. And then the last little thing they added in here is this kind of cool feature where you can cut the grass, where it's almost like they have a clip plane tied to the end of each one of these blades, and you can pull them back. So that's kind of gross looking, but essentially somewhere in the middle there, you'll get this kind of mowed grass look. So tons of options. I mean, you think of the sheer number of possibilities here just in the sliders to kind of get the right grass. Luckily, Lumion has given us some great ones to work with. I really do enjoy them. But now we're going to take another step deeper into how we can customize this with these maps, talking about height maps. Yes. Height maps and normal maps that are not normal. They're quite odd actually, but very effective. So, taking a look at this plane here. This was purposely created to kind of look like it was mowed in certain rows and not. That was achieved using a height map. So I would refer you to my importing USGS height maps into Lumion for terrain. Different topic, but I cover height maps and how they kind of work in depth with playing with some black and white images in Photoshop. The summary of that is, black is low, white is high, and grays are somewhere in the middle. And by creating your own normal map in Photoshop, you can create specific patterns, kind of like height maps work in other engines. So that really kind of opens the gate to tons of possibilities. Let's see if I can find the image I used here. Let's see. Fortunately, I believe it's in one of these targets we can't look at here. I'm just going to go ahead and load. I did this test image here, though. So, if we load this in, the black should be short grass, and the white should be tallest tufts of grass. And then I have a little gradient strip here just to show you how that would kind of look. I believe I have that right. And set this to all. Believe I have it in test. There it is. Okay. Well, interesting enough, I actually made the color map the same color as the height map. Another thing I forgot to mention is that these height maps will come in, but they have to come in the alpha channel of the base color or diffuse map here. This slot here. If I've lost you right there, I would recommend I'd refer you to my substance materials. It's kind of advanced material tutorials I made 4 parts, and I'm definitely gonna make some more after this. I go through this process. Again, this is more of an advanced, in-depth look at this, but I want to definitely include this. So this same black and white image is in the alpha channel of this color map, and I happen to put the same black and white image as the color map to really kind of showcase it. It works out really well because the white is high and the black is low. I don't know what's going on with this kind of magenta hue to it. I'm not sure what's going on there, but there's that gradient ramp there. That was kind of weird. That's showing the variations in height. I think I have another one in here. This happens to be a substance material that had a height map or just some sort of map I created to vary the heights in here. So there is the height map. It loaded into here, and let's see, the moss is right here. So I had this material and I loaded the height map. I exaggerated it so it looked like this, just to kind of show that variation it can do. And so if we look at this as well, we'll see parts shorter, parts taller. So that kind of opens the door to just even more possibilities if you're really trying to get the specific grass. 90 to 95% Lumion users will be just fine with what Lumion has, maybe playing with some sliders here. But for those who really are looking for the perfect grass, Lumion is not really limited here. It's not limiting you here. It is. They left the door open to do a lot of really cool things. And there's one more thing I want to show off too. Remember, this is off of the heights. I'm going to load that test again. I can just go ahead and color this green. So that's only affecting the height here. Lumion has a default kind of bending force in here, but I'm also going to talk about one other thing, and that's the weird normal maps that you can play with in here. So here's another material. It's a little desaturated. Let's make that a little brighter. But take a look at that normal map. Again, not very normal. That usually normal maps are purple. There are variations in colors that correspond with which way things are supposed to be reflecting, but in general you're dealing with red and blue and maybe a tiny bit of green. When I took a look at the fur, let's see, one of the fur ones here, which I'm going to cover a little more in another tutorial, but you take a look at this fur here, I couldn't help but notice that normal map there and wondered what was going on there. So I can't find normal maps like that. So I just went ahead and basically created my own. Oh, I kind of wish I had that grass back. Let's just go and start with clean cut grass and make it a little taller here. So this bending force can be affected by some of these normal maps. So let's take a look at these here. Have them outside here. So let's do this on the sphere. I think this will look really be showcased well on this sphere here. Again, I'm going to increase the size, make sure everything shows up. Gravity force, bending force. So the bending force is going to affect this normal map. So let's go ahead and bring you one in here. So I just did several basically randomized colors I found online. We'll take one like this one. Do you see that? Looks like that pattern. I'm not, scientifically, I could go through and find out which color corresponds to what angle. I think it has to do with that. I didn't go that deep. I just kind of splattered colors everywhere, and I've been baffled by the results I've been getting already just by doing that. Again, this is affected by the bending force. Let's try another one. I'm just going to go through all of them. You'll see I experimented more with 2. We'll come back to that one. 2 happened to be my favorite. Just a nice kind of randomization of the way the grass blades go. I mean, grass got a pretty tricky life. It gets stepped on, it gets blown, it grows in weird directions, and nature just doesn't grow it perfect. It takes a lot of work to make it look even perfect. So anyway, we can go through and manipulate that. You can see kind of tiling of the image here, but pretty interesting. It gives us a lot of options just to kind of play with if we're trying to get a good looking grass, or maybe sometimes we don't want to use the same grass that everyone else is using. Here's a kind of an interesting one. Obviously you're seeing it tile here. These colors, there's a lot of yellow, solid blue. There's solid colors here, and you're kind of seeing how they're, that's pretty cool looking. think you guys are getting the point. I actually started looking up just random gradients on Google image search to get some of these things. The only one I've actually taken the time to tile is that second one. That one kind of does this to randomize everywhere. So jumping back to that second one, this one I feel like realistically I see myself using. And in fact, I'm going to share all of these with you guys. I'll have a link in the description to all these colors to play with them for yourself. And so what I did with this color normals 2 is I went and tried something like saturating up, like fully saturating each color to see what I get. And as you can tell, it just does a more it just does a more stark difference here, as you would expect. I like that kind of more gradient one. And I tried doing black and white. This was just fully desaturated. And black and white colors work too. Just not to the same degree. So it does a little bit in there. But if I went really stark in here, I'm starting to see more effect as well, but not in the same way. Here's a black and white kind of gradient here. So you're seeing it in just a different way. So again, I don't fully understand it. I would just say stick pretty much any colored or black and white image in there if you're just trying to get some different randomness. I've been kind of surprised. It's kind of interesting. I did something weird like this. You know, I got some weirdness going on there, and you can see it. There's those weird curves, and then that's the white stripe. You know, if I took even more time, I mean, I've learned so much playing with this. Or at least I've learned things that can happen. I'm not fully understanding it myself, but I wanted to share what Lumion's left open to us, because I'm pretty happy with it. So you go ahead and drop that on one like this. This is the one I wanted. Bending force. It does kind of affect it in this way too when the light hits it. I'm going to make it sure the grass is not cut. So, I don't know, something like that can look pretty good. It's my own custom creation. Of course, I could load my own color map into here, and I could put a height map in there to vary it as well. So, that about covers, I mean, a lot of it. A lot more than you were probably expecting to get out of here. I've had a lot of fun with this, and I just want to showcase everything I've learned for those who really want to see the most out of all this effect. I'm going to cover fur again. Fur's slightly different. There'll be a quick video, but I wanted to make it its own video. A couple other little things I want to include in here regarding grass. This grass does move in the wind, just like all the other ones did. So if I go to movie mode, get a good shot on this grass. And I turn on the wind effect. It does work just like the other one does, which is pretty cool. When you're going to render any of these grasses, it's just kind of another tip. I highly recommend turning on fine detail shadows. It looks bad in here, but when you render it, it really grabs more of that detail in there. That works with the other grass as well. And again, this grass, my only warning is it can be heavy. I've had some scenes with really complex geometry, more complex than it needs to be. It was just basically bad geometry. It was messy. And it slowed it down a bit. Another thing to watch out for is double-sided faces. I think it could run faster if the back face is a different material, not the same, because it might be trying to grow grass twice. That might be something I've played with, I think helped me out. I'm not fully understanding that yet. And utilizing the real grass in conjunction with the Lumion grass, because you basically want to focus this grass in the areas where it's needed. In areas that are closer to the camera, And then for the distance, if you will have grassy hills in the background or just other areas that you want to have grass covered on here, I wouldn't recommend doing the whole thing with 3D grass. Unless your computer's running it just fine, if you're starting to notice performance issues, what I would do is I would set this 3D grass up close and then use the Lumion terrain, what's the term is, landscape grass. I would use that in the distance here. I'd use it in the distance, turn it on. I'm going to turn this off really quick. Use it in the distance, and if you're worried about the colors, you can just try to get it close here. You can play with different grasses here to try to match it, or you can even just load your custom diffuse. That the same diffuse that you're using, if you're using a custom one for the 3D grass, you could use that in there too. So that's how I would recommend utilizing. That's kind of best case scenario. Now I've already blabbed a ton of this, and you probably know a lot more than you're expecting to know or need to know. But that's kind of my game. That's what I like doing. I like finding how these things tick and how they work and just sharing it with you guys. Thanks for watching so much. Feel free to leave any questions you have that were unclear in the comments. Subscribe for plenty more tutorials incoming. And thanks so much for watching. This is always love making these and sharing these things with you. And all those color maps are in a link in the description for you guys to use. All right, until next time, thanks for watching.